counting correctly, we have crossed the threshold for quorum. So I'd like to say good morning and welcome to everybody. Good morning.
Morning.
Let us start our proceedings with our usual moment of silence and then followed by the pledge of allegiance. Let's stand, please. All right. Jones, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, from the public gallery, are there any public comments or statements at this time? If there are none, then let's advance to start recognitions, please.
Good morning. Standing in for Janine. So I apologize from the start. I know you all have come to enjoy her presentations, but Janine is on a beach in Hawaii, so I think you'll understand the decision she made there. A few weeks ago, before the first passengers had even boarded, one of our fixed route drivers, Rosa Germain, was scrolling through social media. A post about a missing child caught her eye. She didn't recognize the girl, but she knew her neighborhood well, so she took a screenshot and sent it to her daughter. "Keep an eye out," she said, and then went on with her day. Hours later, while Rosa was out on her route, she saw a group of 4 young children waiting along the street. She stopped, gently asking where they were headed, and guided them to wait for the number 10 bus that would arrive soon. As she prepared to pull away, she noticed the children talking to a man and starting to wander off. Rosa called them back. "Stay right here. The number 10 will be here any minute." Looking closer, she felt a jolt of recognition. One of the girls matched the picture she'd seen that morning. Rosa asked to step off her bus so she could speak quietly with dispatch. She sent dispatcher Letitia Hubbard a photo and explained her concern. Letitia quickly reviewed the live photo from the number 10 bus, driven by Pam Craven, and confirmed Rosa's hunch. This was in fact the missing child. Letitia calmly called Chattanooga police and then phoned Pam, asking her to pause the bus in a safe spot and wait for officers. Meanwhile, word was spreading through the girl's family. Her sister and grandmother, searching frantically, flagged down another of our drivers, Linda Robinson. Linda hadn't seen the children, but she checked in with dispatch, learned what had happened, and pointed the family straight to Pam's location. Moments later, Chattanooga police arrived, reunited the girl with her loved ones, and made sure all the children were safe. That day, Rosa, Pam, Linda, and Letitia showed what it means to live out a core CARTA belief, to connect communities and empower lives. They stayed observant, acted with calm professionalism, and worked together seamlessly, protecting a child and bringing peace to her family. Collectively, Rosa, Pam, and Linda bring nearly 25 years of service to CARTA, while Letitia, though newer in dispatch, has been a part of our team for years as a driver. Today, we're proud to honor all 4 of them with the CARTA Ambassador Award for their dedication, teamwork, and care for the community we serve. We welcome them. Congratulations. Thanks. You're welcome. Okay, we're gonna maybe stand shoulder to shoulder there. Yeah. How's this? Guys, I'm gonna move this chair. There you go. I'm gonna stand. I'm sure I'll take this.
Okay. Yeah, and Charles, if you can just do that.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And on three, ready, 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
That was really remarkable. So thank you to our team. And that truly is, I think, holding the flag for Carter, waving proudly. All right, moving on. Charles, would you like to introduce our guests?
I would, thank you. Good morning, Chair Dennison and Board of Directors. We're on page 2 of the packet, and let me just take a minute first to introduce our guests that are at the table. From Kimley Horn, which is our one of our on-call consultants. Mary Kate and Dan are here. They're going to do a self-introduction in just a minute. But they're not new faces to us. They've been working with us for the last several months on different projects. But today we're going to be talking about a very important policy that will come to the board next month. And so if you will refer to page 2, I'm going to read the memo so that we're all clear. And then I'm going to turn it over to Mary Kate and Dan to walk us through a presentation. And our ask of the board today is listen, learn, and then engage. Ask questions. This is the time to go ahead and kind of make yourselves familiar with the potential policy. We'll do another conversation at the October Executive Committee meeting, and then next month at the board meeting, we'll ask you to consider approval of this policy, and we'll talk about the why through the presentation. So let me refer to the memo first. This item is presented for information and discussion only. No board action is requested at this time. A resolution for adoption will be brought forward in October. This item aligns with CARTA's strategic imperatives of service quality, customer service, fiscal accountability, community engagement, and compliance. Summary of need. Approval of this future resolution will allow CARTA to move forward towards a smarter, more transparent, and a more strategic approach for planning and evaluating our transit system. The Transit Service and Performance Standards Framework establishes a consistent, fact-based method for answering 3 fundamental questions. Number 1, where, when, and how should CARTA provide service? This is going to be guided by our service design guidelines. In other words, route frequency, directness, and stop spacing. Number 2, how do we measure if a route is performing well or poorly? Measured by service standards, which are key performance indicators, such as passengers per hour, subsidy per passenger, on-time performance, and customer complaints. And then third and finally, what should we do when a service underperforms? We will address this through a clear action framework, which uses a simple green, yellow, red system with clear follow-up action items for staff to take place. So with that introduction, again, we do not plan to have any, once the proposal of the policy is adopted, the time frame is like this. September, we would do an introductory framework for the board, which is today. October, we would return with the formal adoption, but the engagement timeline really is going to be almost a year plus in length. We would see no immediate changes to the transit network until 2027, so January or May of that year. So we've got a lot of lead time because of all of the public engagement and stakeholder engagement we would want to make sure takes place prior to making any changes. So with that, I will turn it over to Dan and Mary Kate to introduce yourselves and educate the board.
Great.
Also, board members, you have a printout of the presentation next to you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Charles and board for having us here today. My name is Dan Nelson. I am a transit planner with Kimley Horn. Been with the firm for going on 6 months, but I have about 18 years of experience in the industry. I've been a transit planner my entire career. Worked at a number of agencies across the country, both large and small. But really have enjoyed my time working at agencies like CARTA. I spent the last 5 years helping the city of Jackson, Mississippi transform their public transportation system. We delivered a network redesign and a host of other supporting programs and policies to help improve that system. which has been a really rewarding experience, and we're excited to be here with Carta to do the same. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mary Kate, who's gonna kick us off.
Yes, hi. Mary Kate Marukian. I'm also a transit planner with Kimley Horn. I've been with the firm about 6 years. Before that, I worked at public agencies across the Southeast. We have a couple team members that aren't here today, Kevin Tilbury and Hannah Pack. But we've been working very closely with Charles and his team on service recommendations and developing a program of potential improvements for the system. And I love Chattanooga, so I just love any excuse to come down here whenever I can. So we're going to get into a little bit of just the background and purpose, and if it's all right, I'm going to stand up if that's not too. So what we're going to talk about today is how do we get to Carta's vision? So Chattanooga has already done a lot of work on trying to identify where do we want to be with Carta's system? What do we want the network to look like? And it's not just bus service, it's where can we provide these high frequency corridors so we can attract more riders? Where can we connect with other services, other modes? And how do we identify where can we offer service that we don't currently today? Where are these gaps? Where are these opportunities across the network? So there's been a lot of really important work already done to decide what do we want to be? And the question is, how do we get there? So right now the system is established, it's strong, but it is what it is. So how do we build intentionally with incremental steps to get to a vision that makes sense? We're taking bite-sized chunks so that we're growing at a rate that matches with demand and is appropriate for the market. So there's already a lot of work going on. It's not just one project. It's a lot of pieces that come together to make up a proposal that makes sense for Carta's growth moving forward. So as Charles mentioned, we've been working with Carta for a few months now, gosh, going on a year. And there's been a lot of work going on. So we're looking at fares. We're looking at the current bus system service levels. We're looking at bus stop guidelines. Where should we space them? How many amenities should we provide at different stops? We're also looking at where to connect with other modes, other services. How can we best connect with tourist attractions like the incline? So this is all coming together to make a unified, consistent study that'll help Carta grow in a way that makes sense. So what we're here to talk about today is service standards and design guidelines. So why have them? So what service guidelines and performance standards do is just really provides a framework that Carta can be consistent in reporting how well it's doing, build that community trust. This is what we're aiming to do. This is how well we're holding up to that standard. It also helps meet federal standards. FTA loves to come in and do checks and tell you what you're doing right, what you're not doing right, and that affects your funding levels. So it's important to meet those guidelines. Also just keeps you on track. You want to make sure that you're growing towards that long-term vision. And in order to do that, we have to make sure that we're performing and offering the services at the best level that we can. So that framework will help hold Carta accountable. It'll help keep services running efficiently and just service quality. You want to be able to grow, expand services, grow your ridership, but we can't do that unless we're performing well and performing well consistently. So tracking that performance, providing that framework where we're reporting the same metrics, we can track trends, we can help measure how well we're doing and provide changes that will address those. So a lot of other systems do have service design guidelines and standards. We studied some peers. We also looked at some aspirational peers that Carta would love to aspire to perform and offer the same menu of services. So I'd say the agencies like Cap Metro in Austin, King County Metro in Seattle, Metro and the Twin Cities, these are mature systems. They've had a vision for years. That vision expands. It also evolves. And what the framework allows them to do is to make incremental changes so that they know what they're measuring towards. We're making incremental changes so it doesn't feel like one huge batch of very shocking, hard to roll out changes. We're working towards an established vision, so we're taking bite-sized pieces to get there. Establishing the service guidelines, we know how we want service to look. We know our goals for performance, and we're going to make little tweaks to make sure that we're getting there little by little. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So what does this mean for Carta? So there's kind of three pieces that make up this framework. There's the service standards, how is the service doing? That'll lead into how to change it, but overall, we just have to establish, what do we want the service to be? And that tells us, how frequently we run one, how late, what are the standards for what service look like in different areas of Chattanooga? And then the performance standards, how we measure how successful we're being. And then the management procedures, that kind of triggers us to say, okay, we're not measuring up here, we're not meeting this design guideline. What do we do? How do we tweak this to make sure that we're measuring up? So design guidelines, as I said, it's the principles for what the service is going to look like. So where do we want to offer service? What areas do we have to make sure we're providing some level of service? Maybe not fixed route bus, but what is it? Also, how do we want the routes to look? Are these routes going to be, turning into little neighborhoods and making little stops along the way? Is this going to be more of a commuter route where we're connecting two major hubs? Also, is this going to be a 30-minute route, a 15-minute route? We want to make sure that we're matching that level of market demand. And then just schedule efficiency, making sure that the schedule is matching the demand that's there too. If it's more of a commuter route, do we need to have service all day? Could this be spread out? Those are the kinds of questions that design guidelines help us answer. Service standards, this is more, okay, this is what the service is going to look like. Here's how we're going to evaluate ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. Are we meeting our standards with on-time performance, productivity, efficiency of the route? Does this ridership, passengers per hour, does this justify continuing to run the service in this way? Or, gosh, this route's performing really well. Does this justify more frequency, additional expansion, those kinds of things? So CARTA has a lot of different types of services. Chattanooga is very diverse in the different markets that CARTA serves. So while we have many routes, they're not all the same and they don't serve the same markets. So we can't really hold them to the same standard as we would, a really productive, high frequency, high demand route like Route 4, and then Route 28, which is more highway commercial kind of commuter point to point. These are different routes, they serve different purposes. It wouldn't really be fair to hold them to the same standard. So what we've done is take a look at CARTA's current route offerings and take a little high-level look at their current performance. And as we're developing some of these standards, start evaluating these routes against these standards to get an idea of how well they're performing. We also look at the land use across these routes, the different markets that these routes are serving, and we've divided them up into categories so that we can better measure how well are these routes doing within their specific categories. So a core route, that would be, this is high demand, it's the workhorse, it's moving, it's shaking. So Route 4, 1, and 9. On the local routes, they're providing connections. They've remained pretty consistently productive over the course of the day, but they're not at that level of demand as a core route. Commuter, we're serving more job markets, peak hours. It might not be a traditional, 9 to 5 commuter peak, but there are definitely, you see those peaks in usage across the day. It's not consistent demand across the day, so we would need to tweak the service to meet that level of demand. Shuttle, that would be a more downtown market. There's destinations all along the way, but it's a specific area that you're trying to hit a lot of key points within a confined geographic zone. Special services, this would be those partnerships with university. Maybe the service hour needs aren't the same. Maybe it's a special event, but it's not going to be as tied in with the rest of the system. It's more for a specific use or a specific event. And then on demand, this is flexible. This is when we say maybe fixed route isn't the best mode to offer in this area. Maybe there is a level of demand, but there's not the density to support a productive, efficient bus running down a corridor. I always like to say, the most efficient way to run a bus is down a straight line with everybody crowded along the sidewalks. Well, that's not every area, so we do have to adjust the routes to meet the level of demand. And then paratransit service, that's the, the non-emergency medical trips, those folks that need an ADA accessible vehicle 3/4 of a mile outside the fixed route. But the on-demand, that's more car-to-go. It's flexible. It's on demand with Uber that the agency operates basically. So as you can see, we're looking at the different routes here. You can see the markets look very different. We have routes that operate within the downtown core. It's tighter, it's more density. The density of people and land uses are much greater. So you're gonna be picking up more people, you're gonna be dropping off more people within that area, just because there's more people to pick up and drop off at more places. These routes that are traveling long distances, I'd say with the exception of Route 4, you're going from an area of density, crossing a whole lot of nothing to get to another area of density. So the routes are different, the measures should be different to test the level of productivity and success of a route. You should also have different design guidelines for those routes. If you've got, let's take Route 28, which runs all along, highway commercial up to the community college. You don't need to stop every quarter mile when there's nothing to provide a stop to. So when we're talking about stop spacing guidelines, frequency guidelines in a downtown environment, that makes more sense. You have things that are open at different times. There are more places to go. You might need more bus stops. A route like that, depending on the speed of the road or what's along the road, you have different demands of that route, just to provide an example. So service design guidelines, this is how we decide what we want the service to look like, what we want it to feel, the perceived level of service from the customer. So that's frequency. Studies show people stop looking at a schedule and just walk out to a bus stop if it comes at least every 10 minutes. So if there's a high demand of a transit service, frequency should reflect that. Buses need to be coming more frequently to meet that level of demand. Span, that's how early or late a service runs. If we're seeing that ridership isn't really dropping off towards the end of the day, it's maintaining its, people are riding all the way up until the end, that might be a signal that maybe we should think about extending hours. If we've got crush loads at 6 a.m., gosh, maybe we should run a bus at 5. Those are some of the things that a service design guideline would tell us. Vehicle assignment, route directness. Vehicle assignment, that just makes sure that we don't put all the old raggedy buses on one route or another just because some of the passengers might give us a hard time. That's a no-no. Directness, route spacing, these are all how direct, how quick of a trip do we want this to be? Is this more of an express service? Are we going to be stopping every block? This is a local downtown route, those kinds of things. So again, this is how do we want the service to feel to passengers and customers that are taking these routes? I'm going to hand it over to Dan, and he's going to get into a little bit of, once we decide what we want the service to look like, how do we measure how well we're doing?
Great. Thank you, Mary Kay. All right, so we're going to talk about the mechanics of what this process might look like for CARTA moving forward as the agency potentially puts this type of policy into place. And as Mary Kay mentioned, we did spend a lot of time looking at peer agencies, trying to understand what the best practices are across the industry in terms of how we design and implement this type of policy. And what we found as a key takeaway is really to keep it simple, right? We want to make sure that this process is transparent, not only for the customers, but also for stakeholders, for the board, and for CARTA staff itself. We want to make sure that we're not over-engineering a process that can't be easily implemented and understood and used going forward. So with that objective in mind, we developed a set of key performance indicators, which are really the basis of this process. And those are divided into 2 key categories. So we have our primary evaluation metrics, which are used for route evaluation, service change decisions, and we have a set of secondary monitoring metrics, which are more used to help track trends over time, help to diagnose issues, and guide those improvements. So they're really complementary to those primary metrics in that regard. So we'll start with our primary evaluation metrics. And again, in the spirit of keeping things simple, we have 2 metrics that we're going to use primarily to help identify and diagnose route issues. The first being cost effectiveness, and this is really a measure of financial performance, right? So the metric that we're proposing to use for this is financial subsidy per passenger. And this is essentially, think about the total operating cost of a route, subtract out the fare revenue, and then subtract out any third-party funding contributions. Like, for example, the Route 14 receives funding from UT Chattanooga. We would take that out, and that leaves you with that net cost that CARTA pays for every passenger that boards the bus. So that's our financial performance metric. On the productivity side, we're recommending passengers per revenue hour, which is simply the number of passengers that board a bus for every hour that a bus is traveling out on the road. Right, so together, these routes or these two metrics provide a comprehensive picture of the performance and the health of a route that we can use to develop evaluation ratings. Okay, so as we put together this program for monitoring and evaluating routes, we have a simple scheme of a three-tiered category of ratings that have targets, performance targets established for each of those two criteria. Okay, and again, as Mary Kate mentioned, we want to make sure that we're comparing similar routes to each other. So we set those targets for each category. And we have this green, yellow, and red matrix here that's tied to whether or not the routes meet or exceed these thresholds. So if a route is in the green, it's meeting or exceeding the metrics for both of those targets. If it's in the yellow, the route falls below the target for at least one of those metrics. And if it's in the red, that means it fails both of the metrics. And a little bit more about how we set those performance targets. And I know that this might be a lot to look at. There's a lot going on this chart here. But what we're trying to illustrate is that we tried to thread the needle between setting targets that were realistic based on actual operating performance of the agency and more aspirational targets based on what we're seeing CARTA's peer agencies perform in terms of passengers per hour and subsidy per passenger. So you can see the dotted blue line is the peer average. That's mostly kind of in the green side of our performance thresholds, whereas CARTA's existing metrics for weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, which are represented by the dots, are falling a little bit below. So again, we're trying to set these targets high enough that we're pulling and pushing the agency in the direction of improvement, but not making it so high that all of our routes are failing on day one. Okay, so that's a little bit of the thinking in terms of how we identified those targets. And again, they're different for each of the different route categories. All right, so the next step of this process and the real value in implementing this type of process is to tie these categories and these ratings to actions, right? So if a route is determined to be in the green, that means it's meeting expectations. It's doing what we expect the route to do. And in that case, a potential action could be potentially to maintain or increase service, right? The Route 4 is a great example where I'll show you here in a second. It's in the green for weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays. We might determine that it's in the agency's best interest to invest more in let's say, weekend frequency on Saturdays or Sundays, or later night service. So this is a signal that we might deem to make that investment. On the flip side, if a route is in the yellow, it means it's falling behind in one or both metrics. And we want to monitor and identify potential interventions to help boost performance and get it on the right track. Then finally, if it's in the red, it's failing both metrics. This signals that action is needed. So we want to start identifying potential ways to improve performance. That might mean reallocating resources. It might mean looking at a new delivery model. So Mary Kate talked about microtransit. That could be a solution. That could be intervention for a local route that might be underperforming in a certain area. We might determine that microtransit's a better solution there. So that's really what this whole process is meant to achieve. It ties performance to specific actions that the agency can take to improve performance. All right, so this is a little sneak peek at what the end product of this looks like. This is a preliminary evaluation scorecard. So you see we've run the numbers for those two metrics for all the routes. This is subject to change. We're still QCing and looking at these numbers. But you can see here that our core routes generally perform pretty well. The 4 is a very strong performer across all days of the week. The 1 is a great performer on weekdays. See some yellows on the weekends. But overall, the core routes are performing as we would expect for the most part. Local routes show some mixed performance, but the 21 is an outlier here. It's showing great performance. And again, going back to how we use these ratings to translate into action, that might be a route where we recommend additional investment. So this is just an example of what that KPI scorecard would look like and then how it would be applied and used going forward.
But the route to enterprise south is absolutely stellar in its performance.
That one could use some work. And as we'll talk about here in a second, we're gonna put together a toolbox of actions that the agency can consider to help improve that performance. And we're happy to come back to this during the Q&A if you have any more questions. All right, so moving on to the secondary evaluation metrics. You know, again, our primary metrics are used to act as a signal to staff to you know, maybe take additional action or analyses to understand why performance is above or below where we'd expect it to be. And our secondary metrics are used to provide a framework to identify what those actions could be. So they're meant to support that primary evaluation. And we have a fairly concise list of secondary metrics. You know, some agencies track dozens of daily metrics. We're recommending a fairly concise list of metrics that we feel are important to help track productivity and efficiency in terms of just total daily passengers, and that helps us track those trends over time. Passengers per trip. So for example, underutilized or overcrowded trips. You know, if we see a route's underperforming on weekends, we might look at the trips at the beginning or end of the day and see if we might be able to change the service span to help improve productivity overall. So that's an example how we would use that. Fare box recovery ratio, which is your percentage of operating costs that is covered by fare revenue. And then we have a number of service quality measures that help us understand, you know, how crowded are the trips, you know, how crowded are the buses. On-time performance and missed trips help track reliability. You know, are we arriving at the stops on time? Are we missing trips? Fleet reliability, this speaks to maintenance reliability. And performance, accidents and safety incidents. So are we providing safe service for incidents that otherwise potentially delay service? And then customer complaints. Are riders happy with the service? You know, how often are we getting emails and phone calls from our customer base complaining about things? So these are all metrics that we recommend tracking going forward. And then this would be published in a regular report. So probably on a monthly basis, we would recommend that Charles would come to the board with this report of all the KPIs and the ratings. So we're tracking on a regular basis the performance of the system. So we have a couple of recommendations around the reporting process. One is to create a data warehouse that collects and creates reports on primary and secondary metrics. I know Daniel's already working on this. This is in the works, but it's important. We know that CARTA already collects a lot of this data. We have a lot of these metrics, but there's still a few gaps, and we need to plug those gaps to make sure that we have a comprehensive data set. Second, we recommend that CARTA compiles a monthly report of route performance for key metrics. So everything that I just described will be published on a regular basis. And then finally, analyze quarterly the primary evaluation metrics and go through that rating process that we talked about. And then translate that into a regular cadence of making small incremental route improvements. It's not always going to be a big improvement where, you know, CARTA is, you know, completely changing a route or converting a route to microtransit. That's not going to happen every time CARTA makes a change. It's likely going to be small changes that can add up to performance improvements over time. Okay, so to wrap up, timeline of our next steps here. Today, we're here and happy to answer any questions about this process and what it might look like for CARTA. As Charles mentioned, the next step would be to adopt the service standard policy, which will be published and submitted to the board for review in the coming weeks. After that, we're going to continue our evaluation of the service and take these new KPIs and look at the route, or the system holistically to see where there might be potential opportunities for improvement. That's going to happen later this fall and into early next year. We start vetting those recommendations with the public and with stakeholders, and then look to adopt a proposed service plan for those improvements sometime next spring, with implementation coming after that next year and into 2027. So I believe that is it.
You can go back one.
We'll go back one and we'll pause for any questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yes, questions, great, thank you both for all your comments. I'll say as somebody that's read every single one of these, there are no surprises in that collective grading. I think everything falls exactly where I would assume it would fall, so I appreciate that. Reporting period, like what data collection period was used for that primary evaluation?
That was your August 2025 markup or service period. Okay, so last August to this May,
Gotcha.
May of 2024 to 2025.
And then a couple other questions around the subsidy piece. I noticed the shuttle had a subsidy of 0, but I'm assuming that's just a different way of calculating it using maybe our partner revenue, because from my perspective, it's entirely subsidized because it's a free service. So can you kind of explain?
You're spot on. Yeah, so we accounted for the parking revenue that does subsidize those routes.
Is there a way to see kind of the inverse of like what that actually?
What the true subsidy is,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we kind of went back and forth on the best way to show that. You know, and that's the whole point of the service categories, is because, you know, certain routes serve a specific function. And you have to look at those differently from your local routes, right? So that's a specific use case and funding case for the shuttle routes. So that's why we have those split out separately, but we can certainly show you what that subsidy looks like.
That makes sense. And my concern is really just, sometimes an external audience might see something like that and not quite realize those nuances, or the fact that, I mean, we are continually subsidizing that downtown core service, but the fixed route does not see those same benefits. So I just want to make sure that that's general knowledge out in the world. Another thing about the subsidies when it comes to this special route, and I think you addressed it, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. So in the case of UTC, that subsidy, this essentially, if I'm looking at this right, and we're kind of in the red on those, it's that cost sharing right now is not meeting like what we're putting into it. So ideally, CARTA is kind of picking up some balance on that specific.
They absolutely are, based on our calculations, that's correct, yeah.
And in case of the, is it the Amical Route 28?
28.
Is that seeing a Chat State subsidy? That may be an internal question.
It's very small, it's $3,000-ish, and
So that's not considered a special. route.
it's not considered a special route, and it's only for student fares.
Okay. And then one last question that I think also might be more internal. Are we feeling more confident in the shuttle and box passenger count than we have in the past? Because I know there's some manual effort of those counts, and I know we've been working to improve it. Or are we feeling a little more confident on?
I think the short answer is, I still have some concerns with all of our data. And the board will remember, you know, in some cases, we're still doing the heavy lift. We are tracking shuttle ridership with a pencil on a clipboard. And so to me, part of what this is and why we're going to take a little bit extra runway to flesh all of this out is that for the first time, we have an innovation, a data person to help us get the data. And so what I want to see from the team is we're establishing the data warehouse, starting to work through the quality of the numbers and seeing, does anything kind of change as we, you know, is there any discrepancies from what the data is telling us? So the answer is I think we all need to be aware that we still have some data concerns to work through.
Thank you. That's all. Yeah.
So the way that I'm looking at this is that what we have seen in the presentation is, for me, bringing structure and focus to our activities. It's telling us what we want to achieve. And it is providing exactly through having quantified measures of performance, which we've been asking for a long time. The assessment of productivity, and it's holding ourselves accountable as an organization for the service quality levels that we commit to deliver to our community. And I'm just going to say it again. People always become so fearful when they hear this word accountable, because it's like you're going to get beaten up. And if I could find a better word, I'd use it. In my way of looking at it, it means that we set ourselves clear goals, quantifiable goals and objectives that we agreed. And then we work towards delivering exactly to those targets or exceeding them if we could. And the extent to which there might be a shortfall is highlighted to us areas where we can improve. And then it's incumbent upon the management, the team, and our role as supervisors to ensure that we implement and execute the right measures to close those gaps. So I really like the way that this approach brings structure to how we go about it, as opposed to hoping tomorrow is going to bring a good day. As an old automotive guy, you must forgive this analogy. This structure that we bring, it's like the engine. It's a finely crafted engine with lots of tech and precision, but the data is the gasoline that fuels it. And you can put in terrible quality 83 octane fuel in an engine that needs 100 octane and it won't work. And that is why we need to now sharpen up our data analytics so that we are measuring what we think we are measuring, because the entire system is going to be data driven. And I think getting some focus on that is going to be an important enabler for the proper execution and delivery on what we are discussing. Already, some of the things just immediately leap out, whether it's a conversation about the extent to which we are subsidizing riders to Enterprise South. This is not a new discovery. We've been aware of this. The same argument is on MOX that we just identified and the route that serves the community college. And we will have to have some more thoughts and discussions on this, because on the other hand, one of the key reasons for the existence of Carter is to support our communities, to enable people to get to work and to get to places of learning, so that we are enabling and helping to contribute to the development of our workforce. And this is a little bit the quandary that we find ourselves in. If we were purely economically driven, then we would say, well, we only do the routes that are green in the discussion. And I don't have the answer to that on my own. I think that is where we need to discuss our social responsibility and the trade-offs that we need to make. But having data to help guide our decision-making will mean that it's not subjective. So I'm pleased to receive this information, and I look forward to us really leveraging it. It's systematic, and I think therefore setting us on a good foundation. Charles, thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
Sorry, I got one more question. Especially while we have your expertise in the room. I've seen a lot of other transit organizations post-COVID invest more in service. You kind of touched on, especially before saying some, just in your general opinion, especially nationally, have you seen that those investments in weekend as opposed to weekday have paid off? Is there any trending to that? Is it city by city? Saying that.
I'd say it's definitely city to city, but I'd say a trend that we've been seeing across nationwide is the shift in the traditional peak.
Yeah.
So there's no longer, I'd say, across the board. It used to be you saw the AM peak, it was from 7 AM and then it started to decline right around 9, but it's not like that anymore. It's a pretty steady rise to the midday. And I'd say that's the same for the weekends as well. Definitely more of an uptick on the weekends. So really data post 2022 is where we're starting to see agencies return to kind of what we would consider their new normal. So it's hard to know what those investments in weekends and the midday have done, but we are starting to see that, yes, the ridership is holding strong in the midday, it's holding strong on the weekends. So I think that's definitely something that we could consider.
Yeah, just on a personal perspective, every Sunday, I'm like, I wish I could rent the bus today, but it's not quite as.
Yeah,
Yeah.
When there's a
Yeah.
headline, so.
Yeah, what we found in the data is that your Sunday riders per trip and per hour were actually higher than Saturdays and higher on weekdays in a lot
Yeah,
of
I mean,
cases.
I'm honestly astonished that it's doing as well as it is, given the frequency, being on the lower side.
Yeah.
So I would love to see, future, especially before that Saturday, Sunday kind of wrap up to that, same frequency and see if they can go on, so,
yeah, the four is amazing.
yeah, thank you.
I have a few questions and none of them are profound. I just want to make sure I understand some of the nuts and bolts here. You talk about Carta's peer agencies. How peerless is Chattanooga in terms of its uniqueness? I know every community considers itself special, but this is a unique kind of geology and geography. So that's the first question. Just general impressions is okay.
I'd say not a lot of other cities have a big mountain in the middle of it that you can't drive through. So that's unique.
Four rivers and lakes.
Yeah, yeah, right. So I'd say size, and we use a tool that helps us assign peers based on your fleet size, the demographic makeup that you serve of your market, general ridership, budget, things like that. But yes, your geography is very unique. We do have some peers that we've seen just by the nature of their service. It's very like dense and then dense that you're trying to connect. So I'd say that way, but not a full mountain in the middle. Yeah.
It's still applied,
Yeah.
but has become likely somewhat templatized at the time to a community that has all of these unique attributes.
Yes.
Okay, if we get there, if we get all green, how good are we?
I mean, that would be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, that's
You get
the
gold
goal.
for it.
That's what we do.
But it
Well,
sounds like you've adjusted, what is green for us, and so when we get to green, are we like average now? Are we pretty good? And
It depends. Compared to the peers, I showed on that one slide that if we take passengers per hour, that peer average is 14. I think for Carta right now, we're at 7, 8 passengers per hour system-wide.
System-wide.
System-wide, right? So I think that, the intent of this is to help push us towards the peer average and then exceed that average, right? But if you get to all green, I think the goal is to then
Get better.
rethink your thresholds and then set those targets higher, right? Because this is a culture of continuous improvement. That's what we're trying to put in place here.
another quick question, I don't know how many different communities you work with. How do the standards that we're looking to apply here compare to the standards that other communities, maybe that are not in your client base? How do those compare? Are we all kind of shooting for the same things, or we have different experiments going on all over everywhere?
Well, it's kind of like, where are we starting? So Carta's just starting with these standards. So Dan put it really well. We don't want to set them so high that you're just immediately not meeting your targets. So we want to set those standards so that you have something to shoot for. But it's meeting where you are right now.
And that speaks to the degree, but are
Mhm.
these standards ones that if we went community to community would be the same?
Yeah. Yeah.
The metrics that we presented are pretty common throughout the industry.
Yeah.
There are some agencies that are much more mature and larger, like a Metro and DC, that are gonna look at a lot of different KPIs. For Carta, we started with a smaller set, with the intent that maybe over time we'll grow that list. But for now, these are the most important metrics that we think Carta should be tracking.
Okay.
And going back to something that Johan said, we see that there are some routes that are red or yellow across the board. If that is the discussion that Carta will have to have about, we only operate the green ones. That's not the point of what we're saying. I think what we're trying to get at is we have to figure out, why is it red? Why is it yellow? What are the levers that we can pull to make the service more attractive to customers, more reliable, more productive? So is that the directness of the route? Is it route design? Is it the number of stops? Is it the frequency? Is it the times that the service is offered? Is it not, are the trips not happening at the right times? Those kinds of things. So it's not doing well, cut it. It's how can we improve it? And so I think those secondary metrics will be a really good kind of like medicine, trying different treatments for the routes.
That's helpful. And the last thing would be kind of a reiteration and support of what Corey just mentioned. It'd be great to just have a clearer sense across the board where there are subsidies taking place, how they flow into the numbers, because sometimes they are hidden. And for those who don't pay attention to CARTA every day, which is everybody else but us, to some extent, yeah, you can get a misimpression. Sure. So, and those are situations in which we can find ourselves instantly in trouble when one of those third-party subsidies disappears, and that's happening a lot nowadays. Thank you.
I think it's unfortunate that we've got 4 of our directors unable to attend today, and this is such a fundamental topic. Given that it's for information today, it's really well received information, so thank you for that. But if we want to get to the point of, formally accepting and approving this at the October meeting, I think that we should endeavor to get good discussion on it at our next executive committee session. Where especially the colleagues who are able to be here today could get invested in the topic as well.
Yeah, if I may, thank you, Chair Denison. Two comments. I just wanted to respond to one of the questions that Director Culp asked, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what you were asking is, when we're looking at our peers, how are we performing compared to others? And the only qualifier I'd want to put in there is based on our level of investment from this community. So I just want to say out loud again, that what we have inherited is a system that has been chronically underfunded for many, many years. There's many things that are broken and not working as optimally as they could. And so as the team has already presented, they've set up these levels based on the level of investment that we get today. And if you look, and Director Evatt knows this very well, we're not getting the same level of investment from our local community that our peers are. So you said the intent. I think part of the intent of this at the end of the day is to demonstrate that we are doing what we were asked to do, which is demonstrate accountability and a path forward in a structured way. And so that's really what this is. But I really appreciate the engagement of the board. And we've already planned for, Chair Denison, that the Kimley-Horn team will be participating in the October 2nd executive committee meeting. And we'll make sure that this recording of today's meeting is available to the folks that couldn't be here. I do think that this is a foundational policy decision that the board needs to make so that staff has the right direction moving forward.
Any questions from you, Lawson?
I got to, and I was gonna hold it. I was gonna get the person I know that knows all the routes to look at it. Cause I know he knows this stuff.
Asked away.
You think, okay, cause I didn't wanna take too much time. I know we're gonna talk again on October the 2nd, but 2 things. Workforce development. Did we fold in like the current or pending industries within this so that we can be looking to make sure that we're getting people to jobs, current jobs or future jobs? That was the first one. And then the next one may just be a little bit in the future, but are we also looking to plan either adjustments to routes or new routes, considering the new stadium as well? Because what I'm wanting to do is to get more people to use our service, those who just don't need it for work, and those who would use it to get to some of our attractions across the city. And as that stadium kind of moves from something that's more centralized, where we have routes that people kind of understand, and it moves to a different area that a lot of individuals really don't frequent, are we being proactive and kind of preparing for those things? I think just overall, what I kind of want to mention to you all is I want to get to a point where it's just not individuals who need the service that are riding the service. It's individuals who see this as, hey, this is the opportunity that I have in my city to get around my city and not have to worry about the driving component. I can just enjoy, and not just on the weekend, but throughout the week. And the reason why I add that, and Charles and I have already spoke, I work here in downtown Chattanooga. And I myself said, let me start getting back on the shuttle. Let me understand the services that we have, how do we utilize that? And I shared with Charles, like my experience with that, and I think it kind of goes back to what he's always mentioning, he knows all the routes. I'm trying to take more time to understand them. The only way that we can do that is to make sure we're folding that within this component so that everyone has some type of opportunity to utilize it and they see the benefit. Well, that was a lot.
So I guess the first part, we did look at, concentrations of employment. In our market analysis to understand those demands. And then I'd say for future land use, I know the Plan Chattanooga is looking at that. Our vision plan definitely took into account the future locations of major employment centers, anticipated stadium relocation. So that is definitely what we're shooting for, but I used this analogy with Charles the other day. You know, I want to lose 10 pounds. I'm not gonna buy the size 2 dress tomorrow. We're gonna work up to that. And so I think that that's what we're doing now with our service incremental changes. If we're measuring success of a route, we know something's coming in this general area. We can plan to increase services as we build that market, but we can't build a successful market unless the service is performing well. So I think these metrics will help us guide the service improvements to make sure that they're efficient, they're productive, they're attractive to folks. Because like you said, we want people to ride it, not just because they have to, but because it's a good alternative to driving. So to make it competitive, we have to make it reliable, convenient. And then as far as the service design, once those major employment centers are in place and, you know, the new stadium, we'll be able to redirect a very productive route to meet up with it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Leandra, any comments from your side?
Well, I also thank you for coming and sharing all this information. I guess I'm thinking about the Car2Go, the microtransit. It covers a lot of, it covers a lot.
It does.
And one thing, you know, our airport is up and going. I'm wondering, do we have any plans or do you have the insight on maybe getting a fixed route to go through there? Because microtransit is good, but it's on demand and it might be available, it might not, you know, and if you're trying to get back and forth to the airport, you wanna have a reliable or, you know. I
Yeah.
don't know.
Sure. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think your answer to the previous question is basically what we would say to that question. We're continually evaluating all the different opportunities for new markets. As part of the next phase of work, we're gonna be taking our evaluation and looking at those opportunities and looking at the market overall. The airport might be one of those candidates for expansion of fixed route. I think we would look to use the microtransit data that we have available to us to understand like what are the current demand patterns there and how could we design a service around that. So it's definitely on our radar.
Yeah.
It's something to look at.
That's so true. And going back to your really good analogy about the quality of the data gasoline that we put into the engine, if we've got good data coming from Car2Go, then we, like Dan said, we can understand, is there potential for a fixed route we could do here? You know, a fixed route traveling as, you know, directly as it can. Car2Go makes a lot of sense in areas where there is demand, but not the density for a, you know, 40-foot bus or 35-foot bus to kind of duck in and out. But yeah, if we can establish there is a potential for a route, then that's something that we could evaluate.
I'll just say one last comment. Happy to see you look at this evaluation and hone in on greens and, I'm sorry, and yellows and reds, but I'm immensely proud of these greens. And I'll just say it more explicitly, the remarkable lack of investment from city and county over the years. The fact that we have a green is truly, truly impressive, and it speaks to our operators, it speaks to our administration. And I think it shows that if we were to get proper investment, there's no question we'd be hitting these greens. Like if we're hitting it now in some of these areas, we would knock it out of the park. So I appreciate you eliminating that.
Thank you, sir. I'd like to cut off on that point because it's like a really good statement to do this topic on. Thank you. Thank you, Representative.
Thank you very much.
Okay, that was for information only, so staff reports, please.
Yeah, hand it out to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you. Yeah, us as well.
Hi, everyone. Hi, good morning. I love the conversation earlier about data, so you're gonna love these slides. I'm Daniel Dufour. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Carta, and here is the statistical report. The first slide shows that Caravan had another record-breaking month. For the second month in a row, Caravan achieved its highest ridership in its history. It did it while emphasizing operational efficiency and increasing its ridership to miles ratio. Any questions about?
Could I put that in the
Yes.
English? I understand.
Oh, yes.
No, let me.
There-
let me-
I'm sorry, yeah.
I'm gonna repeat back
Okay,
what I think
yeah.
I heard.
Yeah.
Is that we carried more people than ever, while at the same time reducing the cost, not only because of cost per passenger, but overall cost, Kinder. Is that correct?
Yes, we decreased the operating cost as well, and
This is because of better coordination, better scheduling, better timing, all that stuff.
yes, there is another data point, which is the passengers per mile. So in addition to better scheduling, implementing the new system, you'll see that marked at the top there. If you look at the passengers per mile data, that is increasing as well.
All right, so sounds like good outcome.
And that's all because of our relationship that we have.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So do we have everything in place to not only continue this, but to make sure if there's any other improvements, we can do that as well?
I would defer those sort of questions.
I can take it. I could take it. So
Okay.
board, no, it's fine. Board members, I mean, just to be clear, this is the best example that we can demonstrate today about the work that we're doing here. So just as I don't want to go too far back in history, but the system that we had, when we all adopted our roles here, and again, from chronic underfunding for many years, we had not properly implemented our scheduling system, and our policies weren't supporting us to be efficient in the provisioning of the service. And so what you're seeing here in the data and what it's telling you is, you can see in the middle there when we activated the system, and so we started using the scheduling power of the software. We activated the mobile data terminals in the vehicles and started relying on the technology. What that allowed us to do was, for the first time, see efficiency. And so I think what you're gonna see now is we have demonstrated the efficiency, that the system's running as efficiently as it could. We didn't have to add any additional resources, and so the cost per trip has gone down. That's the efficiency. But the last two dots on the right is what we would anticipate moving forward. Now we're at capacity. So we've leveraged the efficiency. That's what we were challenged to do. We got the efficiency out of the system. And now we would see, now that we've got that efficiency, we would start to see some corresponding as ridership goes up. Now we would anticipate will need to go up because we'll need to add, there's going to be unmet demand. And so, but this tells the story of what our funding partners said to us, which is get the system running as efficiently as it can. And we've demonstrated it for this program. What you just received in this presentation was us starting down the road of doing the same thing with our other services. This is just, you're seeing the end of this now. You're seeing the end result of that work. So if that answers the question.
Yes, it does, and I appreciate you kind of laying that out.
Okay, great question.
Mhm.
Weekend ridership. So we just achieved our highest weekend ridership average in the last 4 years. So happy to take any questions about that.
Do we understand what's driving it?
That's a great question, and we expected someone might ask. We need to break down weekend ridership by route. And so that is analysis that we're going to do, and we'll have an answer for you next time we meet.
Good.
I can say anecdotally, twofold, there's definitely a lot more consumers getting to local businesses than there were. I mean, weather certainly plays a part. As we go into the fall, I think we're gonna see that go even further. The reliability I've seen personally has gotten a little bit better, especially on the Saturday when I've had the opportunity to use the Sunday. And then just another thing I think we need to keep in mind going forward is speaking to your point earlier about being also a service organization is that need is also rising at the same time and it will continue to rise. So there are employment opportunities on the weekends, but there are also just services that are needed on the weekends, and we're gonna see some of that uptake in years to come. So we serve a very important role, especially on the weekends, not only supporting local businesses, but supporting our services.
Okay. And this is transit ridership overall on our fixed route. You see that year over year, from August to August, we've increased by 5.7%. And when you look at the ridership by route, you'll see overall steady increase in most of the routes.
Corey, based on your experience, would you say that the peak that we hit in October is driven by the seasonality? You were saying as we get into fall, the ridership increases.
I would bet this coming October will surpass that 92 and it'll be our highest month in years, assuming all holds true. It also depends on how many weekdays are within a month. Sometimes just the calendar can kind of mess up that monthly comparison, but I mean, we're heading in a good direction. So if weather holds and everything else holds, October 2025 is gonna be fantastic.
I'm waiting with breathless excitement.
Yeah, so in the future, we will be reporting in that spreadsheet by route.
And one other note, thank you, Daniel. One other note, board members too, I would anticipate that, you know, we received some action items from the Kimley Horn team about setting up our data warehouse. I imagine that this monthly statistical report turns into this monthly performance report that shows you how the services are actually performing. And we'll still, of course, draw out these types of trends, but we'll drill down to how each service is actually performing each route at those levels. So no other questions, we'll move on.
Yeah, I would just say, I would recommend to all my colleagues, this fascinating little schedule here makes for very entertaining reading.
I do have one quick
Spend
one,
time with it.
and I know you're digesting a lot. The incline as it's gotten back up, are we seeing it getting closer to what it was last year, or if we have eyes on that yet? Or for anybody, honestly.
I can articulate, we were not at the same levels of monthly ridership that we were, and frankly, we didn't, you know, so leading up to the summer months, there's a lot of advertising that's going on, and the board may remember, we were not certain on our reopening date, and so that was all based around the reconstruction project, and so there was no external marketing giving a specific date. So by the time we opened in the middle of July, I think we missed out on all of that pre-season marketing. So the ridership has not come back to the level that we would hope. But we're preparing for, you know, moving forward.
I was gonna say, I might be jumping ahead to see it. Incline related thing, but with fall, like kind of festival season approaching, do we have any events in the St. Elmo area that we're kind of jumping in with, or do we have any opportunities to kind of bump it up?
I think beyond that, so beyond what's already on the calendar for in November, we don't have something additional and specific for that type of an event. Although we do have a lot of partnerships with St. Elmo and other folks in the community, but I think we would point to that one as the next one that's coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. Motion to accept the statistical report as presented?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
I,
All opposed? Right, I think. We can proceed. Consent agenda. Are there any comments to the minutes which were distributed? Clarifications, questions, amendments?
Right.
I was not at the last board meeting, so I personally can't really comment on the accuracy of the minutes. I would have to rely on my colleagues.
Can't say I caught anything, so there's a motion to approve for me.
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Any opposed? All right, minutes are accepted as distributed. Thank you. Dina, usually you're exemplary standard. Thank you. All right, Ms. Powell. Procurement report, please.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Nyson, Board of Directors, Carter colleagues, Mr. Frazier, and the public. I'm gonna go over our procurement report for September, and it can be found on page 47 of your packet. This month, I'm bringing reports for sections A, B, and C. Board approval of new procurements over 50,000, board approval of the use of the RFP process, and report on sole source procurements. I'm gonna start with section A, and I'll make a note because the dollar value is less than 50,000. But when we were doing our analysis and even in the proposals we received, it did vary. So there were some proposals that were over 50. We just happened to evaluate and choose one that was under. But back to kind of my script. So right now, staff is requesting approval of a one-time agreement for completion of a customer satisfaction survey. Staff is recommending that CART enter into a contract with Warner Transportation Consulting for a not to exceed amount of $39,031. This includes data collection and preparation of a customer satisfaction survey to support CART leadership in decision-making and planning. Information will be requested from Fixed Route, Caravan, Electric Shuttle, and Car2Go customers. This procurement was completed through a request for proposals process. On May 16th, CART released this RFP for measurement of and collection of customer satisfaction surveys, advertised this procurement in the Chattanooga Times Free Press, included a link to the RFP on CART's website, and sent the RFP to 10 interested firms. CART utilized the following criteria as part of the request for proposals process. Experience and expertise of the firm, 60%, and price proposal was 40%. There was a DBE goal of 5% for this agreement. Warner Transportation Consultants met this goal through the use of a subcontractor for telephone survey support services at a cost of around $2,100. This represents a 5.6 utilization. Moving on to section B, staff is also requesting approval for the use of the request for proposals process for the following procurements. The current scope of work for these procurements requires that evaluation criteria other than price be considered when awarding contracts for these services. The first is a wayside cooling system for the incline railway. The second is banking services, and the third is driver safety technology. For section C, there are 3 sole source procurements to report on. The first is for fleet management software as a service maintenance renewal for a 1-year period. Ron Turley Associates currently provides CARTA with its fleet management software, and the price is similar to previous years. The software is utilized for work order, preventive maintenance, purchasing, and inventory management and tracking. CARTA requires the purchase of this software renewal for another year for continuity of operations. CARTA is investigating other alternatives that are compatible with Oracle NetSuite for government, as integration of purchasing and inventory components are essential for streamlining financial and purchasing transactions. The second and third sole source procurements are similar, and they both support implementation of NetSuite for finance, as well as human resources and payroll. For both procurements, a small purchase procurement was utilized earlier in the year that didn't require the Board of Directors approval since it was under 50,000. But due to the complexity of the project, CART is approaching the 50,000 threshold for both procurements and requires additional time for completion of this work. Carter requires a sole source as it would be cost prohibitive to change implementation firms as they have the institutional and project knowledge that is essential to finalize the production environment. For finance implementation services, Carter will be entering into an agreement with LBMC for $23,696 outside of the $50,000 limit of the initial purchase order. For HR and payroll implementation services, Carter will be entering into an agreement with Insight Global for $29,440 outside of the $50,000 limit. Both agreements will be through October 31st. To summarize, staff is recommending that the board approve Carta to move forward with a contract award associated with section A. And approve the use of the RFP process for work outlined in section B. Section C is for informational reporting purposes. That concludes my report, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to take them now.
I have a question. I'm sure my colleagues do as well. These two projects that are now reaching the threshold. Was there a change in the scope that was requested of the vendors that is driving the increased cost?
NetSuite, HR and payroll.
Yes.
Yeah,
Sandra, please come to the table. For the microphone purpose.
There's not been a change in scope. We're working on the implementations as we discussed previously. And these have simply continued on to this point. In terms of status, we are now running live on NetSuite Financials. We've turned off our old general ledger system and financial reporting system. And this, we believe, will be the first pay period in which we will rely on the new timekeeping and payroll systems. So we're nearing the go live date on all of those systems. At this point, we have the opportunity to do some other automations that will basically make the tools more useful for us going forward. So I believe if we can go through October with those consultants, we'll be in a better position going forward.
So I guess to be more specific in framing my question, I would imagine that the migration from the old to the new system and delivering a functioning, meeting all our requirements, new system was part of the original scope.
Yes.
For which they quoted a price and they were awarded the contract.
No, that's an incorrect understanding of what happened. They did not quote a price on a project plan. They said, here, you can have a body. And NetSuite and UKG have been the project managers on those projects. The issue we have run into is the limited capabilities of Carta to participate productively in those implementations. So when I came on board in April, there were no project meetings whatsoever. The predecessors assumed that the vendors would just get it done. And so I had to step in and basically stand up the whole project implementation process. And it has gone pretty much according to schedule on the financial side. In other words, we were aiming to be able to go live in July on the financials. And for the most part, we were pretty much there. I didn't press it because that's a small part of the whole thing. There's tremendous complexity in the time tracking and the scheduling because you can't, if you know when someone clocks in and you know when someone clocks out, you have no idea what they're going to get paid. There's a lot of other complexities in that calculation. For example, what days a week were they there and things of that nature. So getting that set up has been a challenge. And so that is what we've been working through, and that is what has caused the project to drag out, is probably the best way to put it. But I do believe we are near the point where those systems will be our sole systems for scheduling, time tracking, payroll, and financials. But once we have that in place, there are a bunch of things we can do to make those systems more effective.
So if we approve this quarter 24,000 and 29,000 additional expenses, is it your expectation then that will deliver to us a finely tuned humming machine. Doesn't have us revisit this again for another increase in a few months' time.
Depends on what you mean by finely tuned. It will be a functioning process. That's not to say there would not be opportunities to invest more and get more return. The way I look at the accounting function, we spend $1 million a year on accounting. We can reduce that with further automation. And the question is, what additional automations do we want to pursue?
And that comes with an investment that is.
Yeah, exactly. And spending operating dollars on something like that really strains us because our operating budget, as we all know, is very tight. However, a lot of that can be covered with capital dollars. So it may make sense to spend X amount on something and basically reduce the ongoing labor.
They get a
costs.
return on that investment. Okay, any questions from the colleagues? You must be very compelling. Okay, thank you for the information. Is there a motion to approve the procurement report?
Yes, motion to approve.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, approved.
Thanks,
Thank you very
Andy.
much.
Okay, so now I'll discuss the financial and operating results for the months July and August and year to date through August. I'll primarily focus on the year to date through August, so the first 2 months of the year. And before I get into the details, let me answer a question that may come up. When Daniel discussed the statistical report, he showed significant increase in Caravan, for example. And the operating results, you may look at the operating results and say, that doesn't seem to match. Let me explain why. He was comparing this year's results to last year's results. I'm comparing this year's results to budget. And the two are different. So while we do in fact see about a 20% increase in various items on the revenue side versus last year, that was built into the budget. So the comparison to budget may not show a similar favorable variance. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay. So with that, let me kind of go through.
We need to forward the slide too.
No, actually, if you could refer to the memo on page 52 of the document. So in transit, we were below budget in transit by about $550,000. That was primarily the result of the timing of billing for grant reimbursements. We were not as timely on that as we would have liked due to the fact that we were trying to gather information and data to support the billing at the end of the year. We have now caught up on that, so that was a temporary thing that has now passed. Expenses were actually favorable to budget by approximately $190,000 due to primarily personnel costs. And so overall, we had an unfavorable variance on transit of $368,000, but that will swing in September and October. Shuttle, we were pretty much right on line with budget for shuttle. Revenue was off by a very small $9,000, and expenses were favorable by $18,000. So we were pretty much right on line with that. Incline is where the story really is. The budget was built around a few things. First of all, that we would be open for the full month of July, and that turned out not to be the case. Second, the ridership is, as Mr. Fraser mentioned, is down versus the prior year. So we're seeing ridership volume down by 10 to 15% versus the prior year. And really, I think the story there is we kind of missed the summer. By opening July 14th, when the summer was winding down and after the holiday, we missed an opportunity there, which was unavoidable. So that's kind of where we are there. Expenses were unfavorable by $78,000, and that's primarily due to costs related to repairs. There was a big chunk of repair costs that were in there. ongoing operating costs were slightly below budget, so that is offset slightly. But overall, the incline had a net unfavorable variance of $252,000 for the 2 months ended August 31st. I'll give you an update on the insurance claim. We submitted an insurance claim for business interruption of approximately $3 million. We are still negotiating that with the insurer. They have agreed to 1.7 million of that claim. And there's an additional 300,000 of repair costs that have not been reimbursed. So we're expecting a reimbursement of $2 million shortly. And then we need to dig into that variance between our business interruption claim and what we originally submitted. When I originally submitted it, I built into the budget that we did not expect to collect the full amount. So the actual amount we're expecting to collect is less than the amount of the claim, but we
Could I understand that a bit better? I would imagine that the policy was reasonably well defined in terms of what's covered and what's not.
yes.
And I would imagine that our claim was influenced by our understanding of what is covered and what is not.
Yes.
So why would they be, I'm hearing a potentially $1 million plus delta?
There are variances and how various amounts are calculated, and judgmental items. And so I put forward what I believe is the best claim. They actually sent the claim to an accounting firm, and that firm is paid to come up with something that's favorable to the insurer. So accountants will disagree, and we'll work through it.
Okay, well, keep us posted.
Okay, I will. Okay, thank you. Caravan, go ahead.
Just 1 second before we move on.
Yes.
On this insurance claim, I understand when you're dealing with insurance companies, there's going to be some back and forth.
Mhm.
But I just want to make sure that you're tuned in and that we're kind of working through to make sure that they have all of the right information, especially when I'm hearing that you're saying that they are utilizing an accounting firm to
Mhm.
help drive those decisions. I don't want Carter to be in a position where we don't receive our full due
Mhm.
based on what is outlined in that policy.
Yeah.
So I just want to state that clearly, just kind of piggybacking a little bit on what Johan said, because these are funds that we need. We
Mhm.
cannot have a gap
I agree.
of $1 million.
Yeah, I agree.
Or any dollars.
Yeah.
Especially for a policy that I'm sure has defined probably caps around.
Yeah.
What can be paid. We want to make sure that whatever is due to us, that is handled and that we see the payment there. And if you could, keep us through Charles.
Yeah.
Aware of any status of that.
If I may, I just want to make sure that we are communicating effectively. There's a very specific process that we're following with our insurance provider and for the claim. And this amount that they've agreed on is the undisputed amount. And so what they do is they take all the information, they quickly look it over, and they're like, we can give you a check for this much right away. It's undisputed.
And the rest we want to analyze.
And the rest we want to look at. So I just want the board to be aware that we've gone, like, it's
It's a process.
it's a process,
Yeah.
number one. We've done this with the property side, like the physical assets, we've done this, and it got down to a very small difference. But they gave us an undisputed amount originally, and then we had to go through and demonstrate. Director Higgins would be able to speak to this as well. You got to get into the individual invoices of the people that we're working with, and it's down in the weeds. For the business interruption, it's the same thing. We sent over the package. They're like, listen, here's the undisputed amount, no problem. We want to analyze everything else. We can't, we need to look at everything. So I think we're just part of the process.
Okay.
And we will keep eyes on it to make sure that we get every single penny, because we need every single dime, because these dollars are used, as the board knows, to fund transit and the other services.
Correct. Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Sure. Just out of curiosity, this happened, I believe, in mid-process of raising prices at the incline.
Mhm.
Is that a problem here? Or is that something they're trying to cleave? And then second, are they looking at current numbers as some sort of reflection of business that we need to be generating?
We drove it off of the prior year numbers. So in other words, we said this is how much we've collected in prior years during the period that the incline was closed.
Okay,
And we did not build in that price increase because we would not have had the price increase during that period. And that's really a question for an economist. As I mentioned, ridership is down. So the fares are up. So how would we build that in? And that's the level of detail that they would not get into.
they're not looking at current July numbers.
No.
Okay.
I mean, they look at July numbers through July 13th when it was closed.
Got it.
They don't look at anything prior to that, or after that. All right. Any other questions about incline? Okay, Caravan, is pretty much right on budget. We were off by $11,000, on the revenue side. And we're $2,000 off on the cost side. And this is probably the best example where Daniel mentioned that we were way up on the ridership versus prior year. On the financial statements, revenue is up 20% over prior year. Because we are up over prior year, but the budget anticipated that, so that's why we're pretty close to budget. And then finally, parking, which has been the shining star over the past couple of months. We had a very aggressive budget for revenue of parking, and we've actually exceeded that budget by about $50,000 or 7%. So that's doing very well. Meanwhile, the costs are fairly well controlled. So overall, we have a very favorable variance on parking of $146,000. I think some of the favorable variance on the cost side on parking is due to timing. So I expect that I would expect to see us unfavorable on costs for parking when those bills catch up with us at a different time. So overall, we fell short of budget by about $700,000 in August. Our year to date through August on the revenue side. That's primarily due to the shortfall on incline. And that is also due to the shortfall on transit, which was related to the timing of grants. And we have a net unfavorable variance on net income of approximately $500,000. So that's pretty much a summary of the financials. I'll open it up to any questions that anyone might have.
Questions, colleagues?
Awesome job for you.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam.
All right.
Motion to accept the operating results for August.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we accept the financials. Thank you very much for all the information and the clarification. New business. Incline anniversary. That sounds like an interesting event.
It's gonna be fun.
Mhm.
Good morning, everyone.
Alright.
We will give you a little bit of an update of what we have in store for the Incline's 130th anniversary. This is just something that everything that we're going to talk about is not set in stone. This is just something we're bringing to the board for information. We would like to propose a ticket price for that one particular day on November the 16th, for that day, for $1.30 to commemorative date and have a price for the 130 years. What better way to celebrate that as to put it out to the general public for $1.30?
Oh, it's worth $150.
That would be great. We would also like to, I'm in the process of getting food trucks, just different types of food trucks like barbecue trucks, taco trucks, bounce houses, face painting for the kids. And we like to have music out there. We're not sure if we're just gonna play music or have live music. But that's some of the things that we're working on. And like I said, it's not set in stone. We're wanting to have cupcakes and just have a big party and we're gonna invite St. Elmo vendors and a lot of the St. Elmo residents. And I'll leave it.
Yes,
let
thank you.
give The
Good,
rest.
good morning. So our public launch for this event will happen on November the 1st. And this will include, announcements on the websites. We'll have multiple social media posts promoting the $1.30 ticket price. We'll also work with the St. Elmo Neighborhood Association to get out targeted email blasts to the residents promoting the events. We're gonna hang banners. Let's show you the banners. We're gonna hang banners at the top station and the bottom station of the incline. We'll also issue press releases to local media and also invite them to attend the festivities. We do plan on inviting Mayor Kelly, Mayor Wamp, Councilwoman Dotley, and Commissioner Graham, and hoping they'll say a few words when they come see us. So to help celebrate on the day of, we're going to give away anniversary stickers. You can see there's an example on the water bottle. We've got some t-shirt designs that we're kind of working through. So we're not going to print a lot of t-shirts, probably 130. And we'll give those to riders, employees, and then other VIPs. So we hope to see you guys there on November the 16th. In the meantime, if you have any ideas on how to make this a better event, please reach out to us.
Sounds like a really nice event. I was just wondering, is it feasible to also use our buses as a moving billboards to promote the event?
So I think we could definitely, so the shuttles do not have bus ads on them. They only have wraps, but we certainly could put some ads on some fixed route buses. I think we could look into that for sure.
We should buy a medical camera. Yes, please sing out loud.
What was it?
In addition to your illustrious list of invitees, perhaps you should also consider to include the mayor of the city of Lookout Mountain.
Good thought.
I would also, the incline can be prohibitively expensive for a lot of Chattanooga's, and this is a phenomenal deal. I'd be curious if we can do some outreach to people for which the incline is often out of reach. I mean, St. Elmo Neighborhood Association is great, but I'm also thinking of the Alton Park neighborhood. Reach out to Councilwoman Dotley and the Net Resource Foundation, the Bethlehem Center, some of those folks to see if we can get a lot more people out here that traditionally just can't access this resource.
And also, can you include the Howard School as well? Please.
So the ticket is $1.30 up and $130 down.
That's it.
I do have just a curiosity about the ticketing. Is it gonna still be online for that day, or is that a
Yes.
process price?
I have been working with Rock City. The ticketing will be online also for our guests from abroad to more or less take advantage of that price.
And would you still like buy the ticket in advance at a certain point?
Yes, you can still purchase tickets in advance for that day. And once they select that option, that $1.30 ticket price will pop up.
So the ticketing site will be updated on the 1st of November. So when they go there on that day, they can see the $1.30 ticket price. Yeah. That gives them a couple of weeks to plan ahead.
You plan the trucks at the bottom or at the top of both ends?
Probably, what we're wanting to do is park them up where the old incline car that we took out of service. We like to rope off that area and have all the food trucks, the vendors, where the kids can get their face painted. And that way we don't have a lot of traffic more or less coming by. They can just use that exit and not have the confusion of the traffic and make it a lot safer.
All right, any other comments? Thank you very much. You're welcome. That sounds exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any old business? Any new business? We've done all the new business. Oh, then Motion to adjourn?
Yeah. So moved.
Meeting adjourned.
Get you gavel over there.
5 minutes and then executive session. Thank you, everybody.
I need to go.